The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the Pentagon is going to upgrade Australian defence bases and the US bases in Guam to counter the growing military threat from Beijing. Specific details of the plans are classified, but officials say runways are going to be upgraded, expanding the capacity to move large numbers of troops in the event of a major conflict. Here's a look at what's happening on Guam, courtesy of the Wall Street Journal.
In the tiny Pacific paradise of Guam, Operation Iron Island is underway. As China ramps up its military capabilities in the region, U.S. forces are testing the Iron Dome, a defense system capable of firing missiles that intercept short-range threats like rockets, mortars, drones, and cruise missiles. Rear Admiral Benjamin Nicholson oversees all U.S. forces in Guam and Joint Region Marianas, part of what the Pentagon says is America's priority theater, and a region in which the military says China is a top concern. What does it mean when you hear the Secretary of Defense say China is the #1 pacing threat?
You always want to pace against whoever's the fastest runner, whoever can go the longest, the farthest. That's where you set your pace. And in today's environment, that really becomes China.
Something of an arms race in our region, of course. Let's bring in retired Major General Jim Molan, obviously also Liberal Senator for New South Wales. Good to talk to you, Jim. Can we start firstly on Guam? Obviously a garrison island, a hugely strategic base there of US military. It's no surprise that they would be upgrading their defence capabilities to defend their installations there, is it?
Not at all, Chris. And the commander of the Indo-Pacific Command, the last commander, has asked Congress for about $1.6 billion to specifically upgrade Anderson Air Force Base, which is on Guam. So it's absolutely no surprise that they'd be doing that. I haven't been able to catch up with yesterday or today's approval of the defence budget to see whether that money is in there, but he's also asked for $25 billion over a 4-year period so that he can deter China, because it's not just Anderson Air Force Base, it's all the bases in Japan and in South Korea. And if the Americans are now going to start locating aircraft in Australia, then somehow our bases have got to get up to that standard. And the Americans are very, very much aware that a base like Guam is a target for China. And our Defence Minister only the other day reminded us that China has thousands of missiles that can rise out of China and strike any part of Australia, any city it likes, which means they can strike any of our bases. Chris, we've got to take this very, very seriously. We've got to convert these bases. We heard what that Admiral said. He said you pace yourself according to the fastest. What he meant was you balance yourself against the most difficult threat and you hope it won't get that bad. And what we've got to do in Australia...
Yeah, this is what I want to get to, because obviously the Americans don't have bases in Australia. We have the joint facility at Pine Gap, but we've been very clear about not having American bases here. Yet you've got American reports about Americans spending money on Australian bases. Is it a possibility that the Pentagon would actually fund the upgrading of facilities at Tyndall or elsewhere in order for them to get good use out of them without actually owning those bases?
Oh, absolutely, they may do that. But what about our own aircraft? We've got $15 billion worth of F-35 sitting on Williamtown Air Base. We've got so much, we've got all our transport jets on a base just out of Newcastle. We've got the most amazing anti-submarine aircraft down in South Australia and these magnificent drones that we're buying. It's time that we started to upgrade our bases, Australia's bases, in order to make them into war-fighting bases. We haven't had this before, Chris, in 100+ years of existing as a federation. We've got to accept the fact that we will have to fight wars from these bases. If we just want to rest our aircraft out on tarmacs, well, we're going to lose them. We're going to lose them all. And it's not just intercontinental ballistic missiles that will strike them down. The Chinese have any number of submarines which can fire Tomahawk-like missiles from 1,000 kilometres away, which can strike these bases. So we've got to change our approach entirely, and we've got to focus on the fastest runner. We've got to look to the worst situation and hope for the best.
Yeah, wise words of warning, Jim. I've got to say, visiting military bases in Australia, even now, is a much more casual affair than going near any of them, even on the mainland of the US. We've got to be on a much more intense footing, I would have thought, as you've outlined.